Good morning, everybody. Well, it might not be good morning to everybody because you might be watching this in the evening, in which case, good evening, everybody. I'm Tim Clark, and I work for IE Music, a company that I founded with David Enthoven, my partner for well over 25 years, who sadly has passed. But we are a management company. We manage Robbie Williams and Passenger, among others. And we were very, very fortunate along the way to have one young lady come and work for us. She was full of fizz and buzz and energy and joy. And we loved her. And she made such a difference to our lives. And then she went and worked for the music support group. And what a difference she made there too. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Joanne. She was one of the first volunteers for the music support group. David and I were approached by Andy Franks when Andy, who was one of the founders of music support, was trying to get financial support from around the industry. And I'm happy to say that IE Music was very pleased to give that support. And Robbie himself, of course, became a founder. I'm not sure what was his title, a chairman. Anyway,
everything.
He was certainly a founder member. So we're very, very happy to give music support our support. And most of all, I'm very, very happy to be sitting here chatting to Joanne. So Joanne, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be in the industry in the first place. How did you actually find us? That's a big question. I can't remember.
Do you know what, Tim? It was so long ago, I can't remember either. I think I came for an interview and fell in love, and I knew I wanted to work in music, and coming into that beautiful door, that blue door at IE Music, changed my life. And that was, gosh, many years ago now. And I worked with IE Music for 6 years, as you know, Tim, doing everything. I started as a receptionist, answering the phone, and that still to this day remains my favorite job I've ever done. And the reason why is because the family at IE just embraced me as someone who'd never worked in the industry before, but it also gave me a confidence to talk to anyone, because who knows who I was going to pick up the phone to, whether that be a publisher, a tour manager, a fellow manager, anyone. So those were like the early days that formed my love for being able to talk to everyone, essentially. And I love talking. So it was a match made in heaven. And then so I moved to Berlin and worked at a label called City Slang in Berlin for a little while, and that's where things got pretty dark for me. So I got really unwell, and my addiction really took over when I was in Berlin. And David was the one who gave me the advice that I needed to change my life, essentially. So I flew back to London and had a meeting. I came into the IE offices, and I'll never forget that day. It was a Friday, and David sat me down on the sofa and said, there's always somewhere where you've been welcome, but we don't push people through the door because that's not how recovery works. And that was the Friday. And then the following Tuesday, I attended my first 12-step meeting. And that was 11 years ago. And I haven't touched a drink or a drug since. So that
well done.
Thank you. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. And, I've got you and David to thank for always believing in me. And so time went on a little bit. I had to get myself well. I had to come out of the industry for a little while to kind of to make sure that I could maintain a sober lifestyle. And then I came back to this country and I worked in the NHS for 4 years in frontline mental health services. But I always knew I wanted to come back to music. I
remember you were based in Cambridge, weren't you?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And both of you were still supporting me from afar. It was still happening. The IE family still had its arms around me. And I knew I wanted to come back. And it's so interesting because David dying was the catalyst that brought me back. I'd known that I wanted to bring mental health awareness and addiction awareness into the industry, but I didn't know how. And then we lost David, and I felt that I had this calling to come back and to fulfill the position that he'd had for me. He helped me. He saved my life. It was when we spoke that day, it was completely non-judgmental. It was, I've lived this life. He himself was in recovery, I think, for about 25, 30 years at that point. He said, this is what works for me, and this is a suggestion that I have for you. And that non-judgmental, completely confidential conversation was the catalyst for everything. And I just wanted to bring that back into the music industry that we know and love. So interestingly enough, I've moved back to London, and I was just looking around for industry jobs, and I met David's daughter, Belinda, at an event we were at. And she said, oh, have you heard about music support? Frank's starting this charity, music support. And I hadn't heard of it at that point. So it was almost like a pincer approach. I approached Francie, and my sponsor at the time also knew one of the volunteers. So I kind of, within like 2 weeks of succession, music support had heard about me. And I reached out to them, and they said, well, you're now the third person who's mentioned you. We obviously need to talk to you. So I'm really proud to say within a few weeks, I was, being trained up to be a helpline volunteer. And I was the first volunteer to take a call on the helpline on January the 5th, 2017, I think. And
Wow.
And from there, it went from strength to strength, helping people. That was in a voluntary capacity. Music Support got a little bit of funding thanks to kind contributions for people like Iron Music and yourself, Tim. And they said, we've got this money. Do you want to come and work for us full time? So that's how it happened. So applying all of my understanding and my experience of having worked in the industry for so long, but also my mental health and my own addiction story, bringing those into a space to be able to offer what David offered for me, which is completely non-judgmental, confidential conversation around making real change happen for people. And that was 3 years ago, which is amazing.
Wow. Well, that's a great story. But of course, a lot of people think that the music industry is all glamour and fun and so on. But you and I both know that it is such a tough environment. Touring, you're away from home, you're up late, you're staying in, well, sometimes opulent hotels if you're a big star, but a lot of the time, sort of dingy B&Bs and so on. And it can be a very lonely life. You must have been able to have shared experiences with a lot of the people you were trying to help. How are you able to help with people that have been really a lot of the time just out on their own with nobody to turn to?
I think that's the biggest thing. That's actually the answer, Tim, is being the person to turn to, especially being on the other end of the phone and that person talking, and they can hear in your voice when you understand. And it's not a, oh, they're there. It's a, no, do you know what? I know exactly how you feel. I know what it's like to be bullied on a tour. I know what it's like to have, such demands on your time, and there's not enough hours in the day, and you're in this industry because you love it, and it's such an emotional connection for you. Music is so important to you, but you're in an environment that's essentially making you really unwell. And having someone to call who understands that, and who understands that we are human more than anything. We're human, and vulnerability is really important, and allowing a space and holding a space for people to be vulnerable. Again, with people who understand what this industry can be like, because you have extreme highs and you have extreme lows, and it's just about finding that balance, isn't it? And that's what music support is really able to offer people.
Yeah, and of course, music support has been going for 5 years now, and you and I both know that it's not been an easy ride, as with most charities. There's there's a need for support, financial support, as much as anything. How has that been for the charity and for you?
Do you know what, Tim? It's been challenging because we would go backstage and people would turn their backs to us, or people would take our posters down, or we wouldn't be invited into the space where we're trying to help people. And that's been incredibly hard. And, I have so much respect for Frank C. and Mark Richardson and Matt Thomas and Sam Parker, who actually founded Music Support, because they were going into an environment where this stuff was never talked about. The stigma and the shroud of mental health and addiction issues is really heavy, especially in an industry that can often be seen as an enabling environment. So going into those spaces and being called the fun police, which I've been openly called to my face the fun police, because I'm wearing this t-shirt backstage, and I just genuinely want to be there to help people. So it's been really challenging, and thankfully the pioneers that started the charity continued, because they're the ones who have been there the whole time. And I genuinely feel with everything that's been happening with COVID, you know, the mental health discussion has become so much more broad, which is fantastic, because now I genuinely feel music support will be welcomed in a very different way backstage. They'll be welcomed with open arms rather than having, you know, backs turned and drinks hidden. And so that's, I mean, that's one thing that's definitely come out of all this that is exciting. And I'm really excited to see where music support's going to go next.
We've now had a year of lockdown, and during that year, artists have been unable to tour. Crew have been unable to work. We know, of course, that there's been huge financial difficulties. Has the cries for help got even louder? Are there yet more people that music support is now helping?
Exactly that, exactly. And it's been compounded by all the things that you mentioned, Tim, because, you know, lack of financial support, lack of housing, lack of even knowing where the next meal is going to come from, especially as the only charity that supports Crew. You know, Crew have been hit arguably the hardest, and not to for one moment to say that other people haven't been hit hard, but Crew rely on shows in order to get paid. That's why it's called a gig industry, right? So what we're seeing now is, now that things are starting to look like they're coming to a degree of opening back up, there's now that reverse anxiety of, can I actually do my job? Can I go on a tour bus again? Can I do all these things? And it's, and I've heard a lot of artists share that as well. Can I get on a stage in front of a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of crowd of people? So we've almost got this new anxiety that's coming through. And I think the work that music support do is going to become even more relevant in this time, and much more needed as well.
And what about you? You must have got some great personal satisfaction from doing the job, tough though it is. What are the highs and lows of you being involved personally?
Exactly that. It's interesting because it's the high of seeing someone reach out for help every single time is a high for me. It's fantastic. And then to see them, you know, out in public when we were in public, we were able to meet, seeing them at shows, or people coming up to you to say, you and I had a conversation once and it changed my life. You know, I had that at BBC Introducing Live last year. I had a drummer come and talk to me who'd called the helpline, who I'd spoken to without realizing. And he said, you know, I've spoken to my GP, I'm on the right meds, my life's completely different, and it's because I called you. So that is the biggest home run you could ever hope for. And seeing people back at work, loving what they do and being healthy and being happy and wanting to spread the word about how self-care is the most beautiful form of love that you can ever achieve and hope for.
That's a great answer. But the lows, you must have had some pretty hard times too in all of that.
Definitely, absolutely. You know, as we know, you don't have highs without lows, and there were some challenging times. There are some very, especially like, you know, going back to not having financial support for people when you know that they need certain help and you just can't find the help that they need. So you do your best to meet them where they're at and help them to get the help they need. But you just think, oh, if I just had the money, if I could just magic X amount of money to come forward, this would change this person's life. But, you know, accepting that and gaining some acceptance around that. But also as well, people reaching out for help and it doesn't work out. That also happens with mental health issues too, and addiction challenges. You and I both know, especially addiction, it's a fatal disease. And if left untreated, then unfortunately we have lost people. And that's reality of working in this space.
Yeah, that's incredibly sad. So what advice, if anybody is watching this, what advice would you give them if they're feeling vulnerable or out of control? What would you say to them now?
Reach out for help. Do it. You deserve it. Reach out for help. You don't know where it's going to take you, and that's the beauty of it. And I think reach out to someone who knows. That's why music support are so good at what they do. They know what to do.
Well, you know, first of all, I have to say that I can't tell you how much it means to me that David was such a part of your recovery. He did a brilliant. I think you probably know at the funeral, at his funeral, So many people came up to me and said, without David, I wouldn't be here. And it is so important that there are people like you doing what he did so well. And I know you're doing it incredibly well. And so it's a privilege. It's a privilege to have had you work for us, and to have brought that special thing into our lives. But it's a real privilege to have known you, and to have seen you blossom, and to have seen you conquer your demons, and now to be reaching out to other people with the help that was given to you. It's a real privilege, I have to tell you that.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Tim. I feel honored and humbled every single day that I have my beautiful life in recovery, and the love that I have from you and David. It's changed my life, and I just want that for other people.
Well, thank you. So it's been great. It's been great to chat. Do you have any last words to say to whoever might be watching this interview? Any little tips? Any little bits of advice? Any? Or you could be rude about me if you want to.
I think it's not a PG rated interview, Tim. It's just more of the same. Just ask for help. The help's there for a reason. These charities that exist, that especially music support, they exist for a reason. Use them. That's what and they need you to use them in order to be able to maintain what they do. So it's a win-win. Just reach out. You deserve it.
That's a great way to end. A great way to end. And of course, I know we're going to keep in touch. But best of luck. Best of luck with your work, and best of luck for helping others. If you've showed so patently that you're able to do. It's brilliant. It really is quite brilliant.
Thanks, Tim, and all the best for everyone at IE as well. Let's hope shows come back. I want to see you at show soon.
Let's hope so.
All right, have a lovely day. Thanks, Tim, for your time.
And you. We'll see you backstage.
You will. Take care. Lots of love.
And to you.